contact, 100% keen and modulation is go. 4, 3, 2, 1.
And so for those people that don't know me, I'm Andi Grabner. I've been working with Dynatrace for a little over 9 years. Normally I travel the world and I speak about things like DevOps, mainly to, I have to say, management people or marketing or business people. And there it's a little easier to actually get them excited, because if you put a couple of words in there that sound very technical and smart, they're all excited. I've been talking about DevOps for the last couple of years, and actually when I went on stage the first time talking about DevOps in Boston at a meetup, there were some technical folks in there, and they said, it's all marketing bullshit that you're telling me here. And he was actually right, because back then I had no clue what I was really talking about. But over the years I learned a lot. And the way I organized my talk today is not a blank slide, but I thought I want to explain DevOps to you. Also the way I explain it to people that might not be that technical. I want to talk about what I learned so far over the last couple of years, what our companies are doing. I want to also tell you what our customers, in this case Dynatrace customers, are doing, and at the end some final thoughts and trends. When I typically start my presentation, I want to explain DevOps to bring everybody on the same level. And I want to explain it to people that are not that technical. And I picked my parents. So my parents, as you can see here, 66 my mom, 73 my dad. I gave them iPads 2 years ago so they can actually harass me now on Facebook when I'm traveling around. But their level of technicality is obviously not as good as ours. But I wanted to explain to them what I actually do, because normally when they talk with their friends and they say, what is Andi doing? He says, he's fixing computers, right? He's making things faster. And I said, yeah, that's kind of right, but it's not really what we do. So I tried to figure out a way how to explain DevOps to my parents. And the best analogy I came up with is I said, remember back in the days, 15, 20 years ago, when we went on a family trip, we had a camera like this in our pocket, and we started taking pictures. 10 pictures, 15 pictures, right? We had a film roll of 20. At the end of the trip, if the film roll wasn't full, what did we do? We took the whole camera with the half-full film back home and then went on the trip a couple of weeks later until we made the film roll full, and then we had what I call 24 features in a box, like waterfall development. Then we gave it to somebody, right, a company that knew how to develop the pictures. I'm sure they had quality control in there, and the people in the black room, they said, this is a perfect picture, so let's send it back to the customer, in our case, my family. And then this was this moment when you looked and were excited about finally we see these pictures. Then sometimes you have to think about which pictures did we actually take, or which features did we put into this release. And sometimes it was really frustrating because somebody photobombed your family picture, which actually leads to frustration. My analogy here is if we do big bang releases, we ship software months after we hear the first requirements, and then customers say, this is not what I needed, I don't need it anymore, or I went with your competition in the meantime. So it's the old way of doing it. The new way of delivering pictures or taking pictures is the way, for instance, my girlfriend is doing it now. This is always I have to bring in Gabi. So my girlfriend, she's from Colombia. I am originally from Linz, from the Mühlviertel actually. But we both live in Boston right now. So we both moved to the States. And last year, I brought her to the Alps though. So as an alpine lake, as you can see in the back. And when Gabi takes pictures, she has her iPhone. No offense to the Android users in here, but she likes her iPhone. So she takes a picture at a time and immediately sees how the picture is going to look like. What she can do as well, because Apple put automation in her phone, she can optimize it, thanks through the filtering options and whatever else there is. So she can actually decide what the best standard of quality is for her, until she can decide to put it in production. Her production is Instagram and Facebook. Her customers, especially her dad, who still lives in Colombia. And what she wants, obviously she wants likes. If she gets dislikes, because maybe she offended somebody with some political jokes that are incorrect, it happens a lot these days, then maybe she takes it off, but she's in control. And if she gets a comment, especially from her dad, saying, hey, are you still dating Andi or just traveling the world? Where is he? Can you take a proof picture? Then minutes later, she can take yet another picture, and you can see here actually with a dirndl and me in lederhosen. So it's all legit. So, but what this transformation is for me, it explains two things. Going from waterfall, big bang releases, to smaller incremental updates. But the biggest shift for me is actually what DevOps is for me. It's a cultural shift. Instead of having a developer, somebody that deploys it and then actually or test it and then run it, we have Gabi, in my case, in charge of the whole delivery pipeline. Right? She decides which pictures to take. She decides what the minimum requirement for quality is. She decides when to post it and what to do with the feedback. And this is, I think my parents at least kind of get it now that I'm not only fixing computers. Normally when I give these presentations, then I typically walk over and say, well, this is now a basic explanation of DevOps. Then I typically go with the Dynatrace transformation story. Most folks in here, by a quick show of hands, who is with Dynatrace? Here we go. So most of you know our own transformation story, obviously, so I don't want to bore you. For those folks that have not heard about our transformation story, there's many talks today throughout the day where we talk about the DevOps transformation and how the tooling works, so check them out. But we made a phenomenal transformation, and that's actually what I typically present, and then people are typically blown away with it. I'm not going to do this today, but I want to first take the chance to actually thank some people. Because what I did in the last year or two when I travel the world, I tell our story, and it's mainly contributed to most of you in here in the room, but especially some individuals that helped me to write blogs, to convert the story into webinars, to do podcast recording, and actually allow me to tell our great story. The guy in the middle, where is he? Stefan? Here we go. Thanks for also organizing the conference and actually give me another platform. Also, in case you have not seen it, we staged out our Dynatrace DevOps transformation at our annual user conference in Vegas this February. We were on stage in Lederhosen and Dirndl, Bernd, Anita, and I, and we staged it out how the whole transformation worked, and it was, I think, very well received. What this also allowed me to do is I took the story, and here's just a couple of logos of conferences that I have presented our story in the last 6 months. So it opened a lot of doors. Last week I was in Toronto. I could not only present our story, but also the UFO. And we get phenomenal feedback, as you can see from the tweets here. The master of the UFO, I know we hear more about this, but thanks to Helmut, who is there on the sidewall, the master of the pipeline state UFO. We put this out on GitHub, and to also people not only to maybe print it themselves. Some people misunderstood what 3D printing actually means. Andy here is one of my friends in the US, and he actually, instead of doing a 3D print of the UFO, he just had a board, some wooden board, but he put the stuff in here and also visualizes pipeline quality. Another nice picture that was sent to me by Sentry, one of our customers. Cool NOC with their dashboards, but also the UFO sitting very prominently there. Last week in Toronto, I presented the UFO as well, and as you can see from the tweets, it's very well received. Not only our transformation story in general, but especially the cultural transformation that happened with the UFO. And as you can see, some funny comments in there of additional ideas. Also, it opened the door for me. Again, these are just some logos of companies that invited me to speak with them since Perform, so since February, and educate them more about what we've been doing. Again, for those in the audience that work for Dynatrace, it's an amazing stuff that we've achieved, and we are definitely spearheading here. So what have I learned with talking with these companies, and actually since the time when people pointed fingers at me 3 years ago in Boston when they said, all you say is just marketing bullshit. So what have I learned so far, and how have I transformed my message? I have learned that DevOps is a very hot topic, especially under what I call the natural born enterprise companies. So what are enterprise companies? You may have heard the term, enterprise software. So I did some research and figured out when we talk about enterprise software companies, mostly these banks, insurance companies, energy, construction, e-commerce. And what these companies did, have been around for a long, long time. In the wild 70s, instead of smoking whatever they did in the 70s, they started installing the mainframe, and they were getting ERP system, CRM system from some of these vendors that you can see here, basically helping them to run the business supported by IT. All right? The key thing for these IT organizations, for these operation teams, was to keep the systems up and running as long as possible. The 99.999 availability was a big thing. However, the problem was software updates back in the days were very hard and slow and error prone. That's why there was a lot of process that was put in place to make sure they can actually achieve this high availability. Some of these processes that we still have in place. So now these are the natural-born enterprises, but then there are the natural-born DevOps companies. As you can see, some logos on the right side. We also call them web-scale IT, so they just redefined how IT is run. Some call them unicorns, right? We talk about the unicorns. You know, call me an Uber to get around. The thing is, there's not only the Uber unicorn, it's not only a handful, but the unicorns have exploded over the last couple of years, as you can see here from a timeline. Right, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, there's a lot of companies popping up. They're disrupting the market. Right? In case you know Silicon Valley, the show, they're disrupting the market. This is just an overview of unicorn logos that are disrupting the banking business. Individual companies that provide individual features that normally a bank will do, but just through their mobile app, and basically taking away what these big companies call the golden nuggets. So, for instance, a big bank offers credit, offers transactions, offers a lot of different things, and they have to basically provide these features, including all the supporting stuff that they have. But now these companies come in and basically take away the cool things and do it in a much more agile and more DevOpsy way, drawing away customers from them. This is also why we see companies making statements like this. Capital One, a forward-thinking bank, they say, well, we are not a bank anymore in the natural sense. In order to become successful, we actually have to become a world-class software company, because otherwise we cannot compete anymore. And this is also true for many other organizations. How do they do it? Some people try to just put the picture of a unicorn up and become faster. Some people realize, though, that just as software, organizations from time to time have to be refactored and just totally need to rethink their business models, need to rethink how they are structured and organized. Because what they all want in the end, we all want to reach this DevOps unicorn status or fairy tale status. So these are some of the things I learned from enterprise companies and why they are so much looking forward to these unicorns. Talking about fairy tales, they still believe there's fairy tales out there. So once upon a time, there was this statement put on a blog. In the last 3 weeks, or the last week, there were 67 deploys of 496 changes by 18 people. Does anyone want to take a guess when this statement was published? When was the first kind of appearance of companies that do more rapid deployments? Any guess? No? 2008. So 9 years ago, there were already companies out there that totally did deployments differently. Flickr. And you can read more about what they do on the blog. Also, Amazon was spearheading here. Amazon had the famous quote of their CTO, "You build it, you run it," giving operations into the hand of developers. I had the chance this year to meet this lady, Goranka. She's originally from Croatia. She used to work for Google for many, many years, and now she's at Facebook. She's the performance capacity engineer, and she's responsible for 700,000 servers at Facebook. Okay? So it's 7 and then 5 zeros. 700,000 servers, and she explained me a lot what Facebook is. Facebook is actually not just Facebook, the social networks. There's many other applications that you have, and even many more. And I also had her on a podcast, so if you want to listen to more what she says, go to our podcast and listen. It's fascinating. I wanted to highlight some of the things that I learned from her. When she started at Facebook as a performance engineer, she actually had to go through a boot camp where in the first 6 to 8 weeks, she had to do coding and she had to do production deployments within the first week in the boot camp. What this actually means, every Facebook engineer gets assigned to a project and they get a list of bugs that came in production, and then they have to fix these bugs, learn how software engineering works, learn what it actually means to make changes, deploy it to millions and billions of people. And what's also interesting, they don't get to pick and choose which project. They are getting assigned to a project that uses a language that they're not familiar with because they want to challenge people to learn something new. Another thing I learned is features. Their strategies: release first, optimize second. What that means, they say there's so many great ideas of features out there, but most of them are crap. Okay? Most features in Facebook never take off. But their strategy now is, if there's great ideas, get the feature out as fast as possible, then monitor if people actually like these features, and if they hate it, then don't even bother optimizing it. Just throw them away. That's why they also have to define success criteria. So if features are developed, people have to say, this feature is successful if after 3 months, at least 10% of the Facebook community is using it. If this threshold is not reached, then they have to kick out the features. If these features are great, then they get a fix-it ticket. Fix-it means they get a certain amount of time to actually make that software good. Because remember, they have 700,000 servers, and if you have a performance problem in there, then this can be very costly for Facebook. Another thing that I thought was interesting, canary releases. So what they do heavily, and that's also true for many companies out there, they use New Zealand as their testing ground. So every new feature that gets deployed to Facebook community first gets deployed into New Zealand. Why? Because it's an English-speaking country, relatively large, but isolated on an island, and also very friendly. So they said if they, honestly, this is what they told me, right? And so it's like, they have a test environment, they deploy something, and then they figure out, do the New Zealanders like it, yes or no? And if they don't like it, at least they don't just tell bad things on Twitter about it, but they are very polite. By the way, the term canary release, in case you have not heard it, actually comes from coal mining. A canary is actually the birds in the cages, and in order to figure out is the coal mine safe enough, they brought the bird down. If the bird survives, it's safe enough to breathe. This is where the term canary release actually comes from. So test it out. If you don't die, it's good. The other thing that I learned is push karma. So in Facebook, if you are starting, you actually have a development karma or push karma of 4 stars. That means you are trusted. That means you can actually make changes whenever you want. But if you mess up a production deployment, if something fails because you didn't do enough testing, enough quality control, your karma goes down, which means you have to do more things the next time to deploy something. So keeping basically a history of how good the developer is with production deployments. And if the karma goes down, more code reviews, more automation, more tests are necessary. Google, another example, by the way, the animation is funny. I just realized there's actually an animation in there when I copied the GIF. Google, some very impressive numbers, as you can see here. But Google was not there all the time where we think Google is. In the early 2000s, Google web team, they had fear of deployments because they had almost no automated tests. And many engineers didn't like to deploy because they knew they potentially break something, and if they break Google search, it's a very bad thing. So they invested a lot in automated tests. 75 million test cases executed every day. And now they said we transformed deployments from fear to boredom. Because now it's just a deployment. Nothing will happen. Another thing what's cool at Google is that when a new project comes out, developers are asked to run the project in production as long as it takes until it's stable. Once it's stable, that means there's certain criteria. What stable means, then they can hand it off to the operations team. But until that point in time, development takes charge of making the product production ready and stable. Another example, Verizon. Verizon, one of our customers, large telecom organization, they have thousands of applications, most of them years old, a lot of monoliths. And what they do so-called dojos. They have Verizon dojos in the different development environments. And I was just in Texas 2 weeks ago, and I took this picture. What they do is they take different monolithic applications, and they assign teams to it. And they say, you have 6 weeks, and you have an expert team that actually helps you to take this monolithic application and basically convert it to the cloud, build an automated pipeline, and then you own the product as well. So what they call it dojos, and they run, as I said, 6-week cycles. The goal is really cloud continuous delivery, and then dev takes ownership of their project. All right, what else have I learned? Let's see, I'm just needing another sip here. What our customers are doing. What we sell our customers when I talk about DevOps, I told them, well, you have a pipeline. Why do you have a pipeline? Because you want to innovate faster. Hopefully you have some quality gates. You want to react on the feedback. And in the end, the only thing you want is really the same thing as my girlfriend wants when she posts stuff on Instagram. You want to have happy customers. And also what they obviously want to make sure is that they're not exploding the cost, especially if you move to the cloud. And a potential development bug results in many, many additional costs. What we sell them is injecting monitoring in the full delivery cycle, because we can actually enable developers before checking in code to do already performance checks, scalability and architectural checks. We can enable operations to monitor a new deployment. And also on the way back, we have many features or many opportunities to inject monitoring into the pipeline. Some examples, and now I want to go from dev through testing in operations and business. For those folks that are at Dynatrace, you know we have what we call the AppMon free trial or personal license. Last year alone, we had 6,000 people actively registering and using the AppMon free trial, mainly developers and architects. Some companies, some well-known brands, a lot of unknown brands. Sentry Insurance is an interesting one. Every new engineer that starts with Sentry, they have to download the free trial and they go through a training and they are basically educated on how to use AppMon every day on their local machine before checking in code. MasterCard, they've been using us already in the US, but thanks to the AppMon free trial, we actually got into the Chinese market. They had a big production rollout problem in China, and a guy who came from a different company, he used the AppMon trial before, he said, I have a tool that will do the job. They fixed the problem, smooth rollout in China to a big billion market, and now we're used globally at MasterCard as well. What does the AppMon trial do? In case you remember, I took the project over from Reinhard Brandstetter a couple of years ago, and I started a program that I called Share Your Pure Path, where people can send me Dynatrace data, and I sent them back a PowerPoint explaining which problems we actually found. So this was very helpful, but I really got bored, and also the product management team said, this is actually boring if you have to do it all the time, so we actually implemented these automatic problem detections into the product. So we also got a lot of cool feedback. What I want to do now for those folks that are working on the Dynatrace SaaS and managed side, I want to do a similar project that is called Share Your Problem Pattern, because I want to also learn from our customers who use Dynatrace SaaS managed and which problems they find and how we can then take this feedback and actually influence the product in a better way. Another company, Sofico. Sofico, a Belgian company, relatively small, 50 engineers, but distributed worldwide between Australia and Belgium. 350 commits, 90 builds, 749 tests. They are heavily user of Atlassian Suite. They're using Source Labs and Selenium for test automation, and thanks to Sonja and Wolfgang, they help them implement what we call shift left. We keep baking Dynatrace into these tests. So what they now do, every single test that gets executed on every single build gets fully analyzed based on performance metrics. So those folks that know the Dynatrace test automation feature, every test gets analyzed, and if a developer checks in code that doesn't break functionally, but if we see there's a performance regression in there, we raise the flag. They also build a Bamboo plugin, so thanks to them, they also contribute back. And now they are doing all this great stuff, 350 commits, 90 builds, and since they have Dynatrace in there, they could, on average, improve response time of the applications by 43x. That's huge, huge, as the US president, huge. Trust me. No more out-of-memory exceptions, and also they got finally rid of the synchronization and wait times. Another example is Verizon. I think I brought them up earlier. Big telco. They have a huge development pipeline. They're experimenting with all different sorts of technology. For instance, if you look on the cloud side, they're having things in there like OpenStack, OpenShift, Cloud Foundry, and they're using Dynatrace on different products. One of their enterprise products where they really make a shitload of money was very slow. It was an old monolith, and thanks to Dynatrace, they could improve delivery time by 3x, and a very key metric for them is quality. They were reducing the number of bugs that came out of every single build and every single test. So these are huge numbers for them, speeding up and better quality. Another very dear friend of mine, Mark Tomlinson, I learned a lot from him. I used to work at Microsoft and HP, now he's at PayPal. He runs PerfBytes, a cool podcast. As you can see, sometimes we're fooling around a little bit. Now he has blue hair. He's a performance engineer, or he calls himself a performance Sherpa. This is a cool quote that he actually told me. He said, performance engineering is, you can call yourself a performance engineer when you can actually influence code. Otherwise, you're just a tester and just give feedback. So what he's doing and what he has been doing at PayPal now, he actually provides performance testing or continuous performance as self-service for engineers. So there's an engineer on the one side, and he has his continuous deployment environment on the other side. An engineer can create a Jira ticket and say, I want to get performance feedback of this particular revision. The Jira ticket is automatically analyzed. His test environment deploys the build, runs the tests, and gets the result back on the Jira ticket. This is pretty cool, right? And all done with Dynatrace. Dynatrace results. So I check in code, and an hour later, I know what my performance characteristics are. Another thing that we actually do internally, is Thomas somewhere here? Thomas? No? He is hiding. We're actually doing continuous performance also in our environment. We have a continuous performance environment where we have constant load running, and we are deploying new builds into this environment. And every time a build is deployed, we look at key metrics: throughput, memory consumption, response time. We call this a performance signature. And basically, then we figure out if this is a good build or a bad build. Another example, Raymond James. Raymond James, they said they have such a large environment, and they try to figure out how to make it visually very easy to compare, is this a good build or a bad build? What you see here is their visualization of quality. They basically have this, what is it called? The green fast responses, yellow medium, and red slow. And basically the one is the gold standard of production. And if they have a new build and it runs through a test environment, it actually simulates production-like load, where the production-like load information actually comes from production monitoring, so they really know which load to simulate. Then they can visually very easily compare whether it's a good or a bad release. Another example from Argentina this time. These two guys, it's not a halo, it came out strange, telecom. It looks like a halo on Pablo. But what these guys are doing, and I thought this is fascinating. So Telecom Argentina, they gave me two use cases. They have this machine where people can recharge their pay-as-you-go model, and also they have an app where people can actually see how much credit they still have on the card or on their monthly bill. And they use Dynatrace to monitor these devices, but also these applications. I know this is nothing exciting maybe for you, but what they actually do, because they monitor performance of these devices and these end users that go over the Telecom Argentina network, they can actually now give connection data, DNS data to their infrastructure team that is actually setting up the cell towers. So Dynatrace now allows them to do DevOps, but actually with their infrastructure team who is maintaining the cell towers, because they can see here's a cell tower that has a very high connect time, or there's a SSL issue. There's too many people right now on that cell tower. So please upgrade it or fix the problem. So some very interesting use cases. Sentry, I gave him a UFO. Derek, buddy of mine, what they are doing, they're coming up with a bad app list. So there's a big dashboard up on their wall, and they basically say, these are the apps that are the slowest or have the biggest problems. And obviously like a wall of shame, obviously, right? So nobody wants to be on there. That's why they're doing whatever it takes to get off this list. They also have a war room, and thanks to what they have been doing, the war room is often converted into a playroom. So they are from Minnesota, and they are very big fans of March Madness when the basketball teams play. Within Dynatrace, is anybody from marketing here, by the way, Dynatrace marketing? Here we go. So not you, Peter, but some of the colleagues in the US, they also actually use Dynatrace to figure out, hey, do our marketing campaigns actually work? And they look at this dashboard. On the top, the number of people on the website, in green, orange, and red, the user experience index, on the bottom, conversion rate. And here's the story. This was actually end of April. So May 1st, they were sending out a marketing campaign, trying to get people to sign up for our free trial offering. Thanks to the Dynatrace data, they see marketing campaign looks good, number of users go up, conversion rate is up, they're all happy and partying already. May 2nd comes along, trend continues, looks good. However, the number of not so happy users is also growing, right? The website became slower and slower, and therefore people were not signing up and filling out the form, and conversion rate dropped. And then the marketing team actually went to the guy who is responsible for that sign-up page and says, hey, you need to fix something because it's getting slower and we're not making our goal. So he said, sure, I can deploy a fix. Deploys the fix, boom, thing crashed. What actually crashed is that these developers, and nothing against Mac guys, or people that use a Mac, but he was just coding and making his JavaScript changes for that sign-up form and tested it on his Mac and deployed it. Unfortunately, the JavaScript file broke on every user that was using a laptop like mine and using browsers on Windows. But it was immediately visible. The marketing team obviously freaked out just a little bit. The developer, however, because now the developers and people that actually do these changes on our website, they also look at the UEM data. They saw the JavaScript exceptions coming in like crazy, immediately fixed the problem, back to normal, happy life, okay? So some of the use cases, how we can actually also combine or expand DevOps from dev to ops also to the business people, the marketing people. So this is how we sell Dynatrace, and this is what's resonated really well in the different pipeline phases. So folks at Dynatrace, thanks for building great products that actually help our customers and also us internally to build better products. All right, some final thoughts, some trends that I've seen. ChatOps is a big thing. So ChatOps, I'm sure you've heard the term. I was in Toronto last week at a DevOps days, and we were sitting in an open space, and people were talking about what to do with ChatOps, and they said what ChatOps is for us is actually kind of the initial starting drug into DevOps, because what we do, we automate tasks that should be automated, because normally there's Kurt, I can always go to Kurt and say, hey, I need this, and I do it like every day because I don't know how to use certain systems. So for instance, I run the free trial. I don't want to get 5 emails a day of my colleagues in sales that ask me, can you please extend the free trial? This is boring. It's a boring, repetitive task. So ChatOps for me could mean I build a chatbot so my sales engineers can actually say, extend that free trial and don't bug Andi. It can be automated. Salesforce, same thing, right? I have to look a lot in Salesforce where we keep our records. Who is the sales rep for that account? Because this guy is using the free trial like crazy. We maybe want to sell him a little more. But instead of going to Salesforce, maybe I don't even have an account for it, and I don't want to use this UI, then I could have a chatbot automating these tasks, right? And there's some additional ones out there. So this is what ChatOps is, making things easier, automating things that are normally you go to your guy, and the guy is doing it. Another thing that I saw, Verizon, they have coding bots. That's pretty cool. So in Verizon, for certain projects, not for all, but as a developer, you don't have to check out code, change it, and commit it to Git, and then the pipeline runs. But you can actually, through a chatbot, can say, change that configuration option in that file, and then in the end, the whole pipeline runs, and the change gets deployed into production. Just making certain things easier. Capital One, deployment bots. So Capital One is a bank, and they have some regulations. So you, as a developer, as the developer itself, you are not allowed legally to deploy a change into production. It has to be done by an operations guy. But now they have a chat ops guy. I have a bot. So basically, a developer can make my code change, the pipeline runs through, and then they can tell the bot, please deploy this into production. So they kind of circumvent a certain regulation. Pretty cool. Deploy bots. Another thing that was discussed heavily recently is the whole you build it, you run it, right? Most of you are developers. And does this mean you are on call? Does this mean in a real DevOps organizations you have a pager on you all the time and you have to be available 24/7? That was a big topic and it's very scary. So some companies do it, and typically they start with shadowing the operations people to actually learn and see how it is like, see what can be improved, but seeing actually that's not that hard. Rotating shifts, right? Not being on the call all the time. Also, everyone is on call. For instance, at PagerDuty, also the CTO is on call in other companies as well. It's not just the developers, everybody's in this boat. And obviously there's also incentives, because if you're hired as a developer, you want to be a developer, and if you don't want to be on call, because this is not part of your job description and not part of your salary, then there should be some type of incentives. So maybe bring this back to your folks. Capital One, another example, Adam and these two gentlemen that I met, what they've been telling me, and they had a very interesting session yesterday, they said they are also on call. So the developers are on call, but they're getting constantly interrupted, right? You do your regular thing, and then an email comes in or somebody bugs you. There's actually studies out there that on average, office workers are interrupted every 11 minutes. But it takes you 25 minutes to get back into this flow mode where just code flows magically through your fingers. It's called deep work. And what they actually came up with is a concept of foreground and background teams. So they have a team of 8 people typically, and basically 2 people on that team are always the foreground team. So if in case something happens, they get the emails, and the people, the 6 on the background part of the team, are never bothered, so that they can focus on their work. And the way they visualize it, they have these LEDs. Where is it? They have these LEDs on their desks, green or red. It means I'm on foreground or I'm on background. So if it's red, don't bother me. Also, they have the same thing reflected in the chat. So you know that you're not supposed to talk with this person because they should focus. If you need something from the team, go to somebody else. All right, hopefully some cool ideas of what people are doing. The last thing that I want to tell you is something that I feel very passionate about, because I'm fortunate to travel the world, and I know we often all work with different people around the globe and different cultures, and sometimes we don't really know how something comes across when you say something or how it actually comes across when you write an email. And one story that actually happened to me a couple of weeks ago, for those that know her, Carolina, she's one of our product managers in Gdansk. And I was trying to figure out how to learn more about our AWS support. So I sent her a chat message. I said, hey, Carolina, quick question, right? Keep it short, quick question. I need some answers on AWS, question mark, exclamation, as many as you can. Put them in there. And then she responds politely and said, sure, I think I can help you, right? I mean, I think you're with the right person. And then she helped me. 2 weeks later, I met her face-to-face in Boston. And then she said this to me. Good, we finally meet face-to-face. I really thought you weren't... You can fill the dots. And I said, what the fuck is going on, right? So it turns out that when I wrote this message, she assumed, because I'm a guy and she's a girl, and I'm asking her who is the technical contact, that I assumed she cannot be technical enough because she's a woman. And the way I sent the message, she just read it wrong. And that's a very basic, I mean, this was not my intention. If I would have been face-to-face with her, this would have not happened at all. Okay? So these are some of these small things. So what's also interesting, and this is something I learned, and I'm not a communication specialist, but 7% of communication is verbal, 55% is body language, and 30 is tone of voice. We lose all of that. I know it's convenient to send a text message or an email, but we lose a lot of what's really important in communication, and we cause a lot of problems in here. Now still, why do I choose email? Or why do people choose email? Of course, we have the technology, but the interesting thing is we are in control, right? I can email whenever I want. I can answer to an email when I think it's good. I can edit, I can think about it. I can also do it in boring meetings, right? Obviously, get the phone out. But what I really lose is spontaneity. I lose the whole connectivity with this person, and I think we're causing more troubles than we actually gain. And therefore, my recommendation, pick up the phone instead of your video chat versus email, if possible. Also, managers, please lead by example. Don't go into a meeting and just always be on the laptop and then you listen to your colleagues. But people just know that this is obviously, you're just only half there. Design for conversations. I know we as Dynatrace, we're moving into a new building soon. So hopefully, when we do this, the layouts and everything, we design for conversation from a structure perspective, how the office looks like. But also when you go through a day, hopefully you do your stand-ups, you do your daily breaks, and you talk with people. Very important. And distributed teams. I think we have people from Gdansk here as well, right? Where are the people from Gdansk from our office? I see at least a couple. Raise your hand. Gdansk? No? I thought we have remote people here. But if you have distributed teams, bring them in from time to time. It just helps a lot. So with that, I want to conclude and say that, hopefully this was helpful. Also, please, take the opportunities that you have. There's a DevOne, there's a great conference to share, to learn about DevOps, what it means for individual people. There's a DevOne 18, right? Frandl, here we go. Papa, servus. Also, I know meetups. I know there's a great meetup scene in Linz. I know it's not always easy because it's in the evening, and I know most of you are parents and you have to go home and you have other stuff to do. So if you can't do it, maybe talk with your employer and say, hey, maybe instead of doing, you can't do meetups, maybe you bring people in-house, right, and do days like this. Bring speakers and then, educate yourself. Hackathons are a cool thing, and I also want to bring in the Coda Dojo Linz. Is Arno here? Arno, here we go, right? Promoted. There's a lot of cool projects going on in Linz. All right, with that, hopefully, I showed you what is DevOps about. Remember my picture story, how you can explain it to your mom. So for me, DevOps is about creating more value for your company, also making more money, obviously, faster, but also making your life easier. Because in the end, automation, all the stuff we put in, should make our life easier and not more stressful. Okay, then you have it in your own hands. And I hope I'm in time, actually. Look at that. Yes. Okay, if you want to learn more, follow me on Twitter and all that stuff. We also have a podcast. It's called Pure Performance, where we have people like the lady from Facebook on there, the Capital One guys are on there. So also our colleagues are on the podcast to share their experiences. All right, and with that, I want to give it back to the audience. Thank you.